Hi everyone. I wanted to make this video about writing and testing classes in the BlueJ environment. We've been working a lot lately with Greenfoot. We've also, been working time to time with BlueJ. We've been reviewing syntax. And right at the beginning of our study of Java, there's just a whole lot of syntax coming at you, but we really got to get it down so that we can do fun stuff. And important, we've got to have our fundamentals down. And the fundamentals of object-oriented programming are, can you write a class? Can you make instance variables, constructors, methods, and can you create and use an object? So that's what this video is going to be about. We're going to do two kind of practice sessions. So the first thing I want you to do is create a project in BlueJ called Practice Animals, or whatever you want to call it, and save it wherever you're working. And I want you to try and write this class. Then we'll check our work and we'll write together. We'll work on making a practice application that will test it. We can test it on the workbench first if you like, and maybe you should as well, but then we're going to practice using it in an application. Remember, the workbench in BlueJ is great for learning. That's this down here, but it's not going to be a usable app that we can package and send off for someone to work with. So these aren't necessarily the most interesting or useful classes, but maybe in some sort of graphics or animal simulation you'd have something like this. So I'd like you to write the bird class right now in the project practice animals. I want you to make weight a real number, which means it will be positive, but it'll, could have fractional parts, decimal kind of numbers. Make the species, which will be like the name of the bird species, and a Boolean that tells you whether it's hungry or not, true or false. Make a constructor, just one this class, that allows the user to set those values as initial values. Then I want you to make 5 methods. A fly method that will make the bird hungry, right? So it just affects the is hungry Boolean. An eat that will make the bird no longer hungry. And make a get weight, get species, and get is hungry method for those variables. So pause the video right now, do that, and then we'll check the work together. I'll code it again in front of you, and we'll talk about it and go over a little bit of that, and then we'll work on making an app. Okay, so hopefully you had some success there. I'm just going to, pull this off to the side so I can see it. Hopefully you saw it earlier. Let's see here. We're going to be making class bird. And it autofills us with some sort of example code here that I usually don't need. So I'll just hit Control A and get rid of it. So I'm going to say public class bird. And we're going to make our instance variables that describe our bird. And these should be private. So private, the weight's a real number, so we say double, so they can have, 7.8 would be a possibility. We'll make the species, again, private because it's a variable. And if it's going to be a name of a species, like a word, it needs to be a string. And then we're going to make a Boolean called is hungry. All right, and now I'll make my constructor. So my constructor should be like this: public bird, and it's going to need to take in values to set each one of those. So I'll say double W for weight. How about string S for species, and Boolean H for is hungry. All right, so weight, the value weight needs to be on the left because this is the value we're going to initialize. And remember, what you're initializing is on the left. We're going to take W that the user gives us here, and we're going to store it into weight, and it stores from right to left. We're going to store species with the value of S, and we're going to store is hungry with the value of H. If you do this work and you're getting null when you say something like get species, that means you didn't store it right in the constructor, and you probably have these things backwards. All right, next we said we needed some methods, okay? So this is the constructor that allows users to set these properties by filling in these values. Now let's write a method called fly that will make the bird hungry. It's not going to be returning anything though. So the way we do that is we say public void. Void means don't return something. Fly. Every method in Java has to have a return type. The only method that doesn't is the constructor. The bird constructor, you'll notice that this constructor method does not have a return type, and it has to match the name of the class. If I accidentally misspell it like that, what's going to happen is you're going to get an error that might be a little confusing. It's going to tell me invalid method declaration, return type required. What do you mean return type required? It's a constructor. Well, the real mistake here is that you misspelled the constructor. But all it knows is you wrote a method name, and that name's not the same as the class, so it needs a return type. So that's your indication you misspelled it. It's got to match, and that's the only method that does any return type. So even though fly is not going to return anything, I can't just leave this blank. I have to say void, meaning nothing. And when we call fly, it's simply going to make the bird hungry. If he's already hungry, he's going to remain hungry. All right, next I'm going to write the method eat. When we write the eat method, the bird is no longer hungry. So is hungry becomes false. And these last ones are just getter methods or accessors, another way for it. So we're going to write an accessor method called getWait. Well, wait is a double, so I need to say double for my return type. Like that. And public double, how about getSpecies? I'll return species. Oh, wait, not double. What type of variable is getSpecies? Species is a string. So public string getSpecies. And I'll return the species. Finally, public, we need to write get is hungry, which is a Boolean. So public Boolean get is hungry. And I'll return is hungry. There we go. We've got a fully working class now. Well, I said we did. Oh, I put parentheses around the end. Don't need that. There we go. All right. So I got my constructor, my private instance variables. Remember, we want these private. All right. But all our methods and constructors and classes public. So let's review how to make a bird on the workbench. Right-click and select New Bird, and we can give it a weight like 8.9, a species like hawk, which is in quotes, and we'll make it false, that it's not hungry. So down here I can call my methods like getSpecies, which is going to return to me a string. I can say get is hungry, which is false. But if I fly, the bird is now going to be hungry. Notice it was void, so nothing got returned to me. Get is hungry now. Let's do that. Now it is true that the bird is hungry, so we better eat. And now if I get is hungry, we'll notice that it is false. So here's the deal. Classes are for making objects. A class is a blueprint for making an object. This up here is a class. Well, where's the object? Down here. The class is a file that gets saved on your computer that's there until you delete it. The instance variables that we made, they only exist for as long as this bird is down here, and they are specific to that bird. The instance methods are methods I run down here. Notice none of those methods appear here, only the constructor. All right, but that's not good enough. Not only do I need you to be able to write classes, I really need you able to use them. So let's make a new class, and we're going to do this one together, and then you'll do one similar to it in a second. And I'm going to call it Animal App, okay? Because it's just going to be for practice. And I'm just going to erase all this. So with an application, you need some sort of entry point, a method that you will run that starts everything and kind of is like the commander that conducts and controls. When you work on a big project, you're oftentimes going to have lots of different classes, but really only one of those classes is what you would, quote, run. And we're going to indicate that with a run method. So public class animal app. And I'll say public void run. And that's all I'm going to have is just some method called run that, indicates this is the method that controls this project, okay? So what I want to do is I want to create a couple of birds and then use their methods and print out what's happening with them, because you need to be able to make objects. So the way you make an object in Java is you first start with the type, which is bird. Then we have to give it a variable name called an identifier. So I'll call it my bird 1 equals new bird, and we need to now fill in the constructor's parameters. The bird took in well, let's review. Click right here and see. Oh, double for the weight, so I'll give it a weight of, let's say 3.9. Then it takes in a string for the species, and I'll call this one crow. And then it takes in a Boolean for whether that is hungry. I'll make the crow hungry. And there we go. So whenever you create an object, you have to use new. Primitives don't require it. If I say int x equals 9, that's a primitive. Look at the lowercase type. The primitives that we're using are int, double, Boolean. Those don't require new because they are primitives. Objects require the new operator and calling their constructor. You can tell when it's an object because its type is capital. All right, well, now that might make you wonder, well, then how come when I make strings like this, how come I don't have to call the new operator? Well, it's a little confusing, but Java does this for about 8 different classes that are so commonly used that they make it easy on you so you don't have to say new. But in reality, you should think that this is what's really happening, okay? This is what's really happening. We're really calling the string constructor, and you'll notice this gets me no error because this is exactly what it's doing. It's just doing it behind the scenes. Now I'm doing it explicitly. Nobody does that, but that's the way it is. It used to be, we've learned about wrapper classes, like if you have int x equals 7 or 8, that's the primitive. Well, there's an object type called integer. And objects are much bigger than primitives, and they're much more useful. They require more memory, but you can put them in array list, and you can't put primitives. So it used to be that when you made an integer object, you did really have to do this. That would make an integer of value 8. They changed that relatively recently, though, so we're now, just like string, you can do that. But again, it's really calling the constructor and doing some work for you. So don't let that confuse you. Out of all the billions of classes, including all the classes you could ever write, anytime you make an object, remember a class is used to make objects. These things down here, you have to have this new, then the name of the class, and then fill in the parameters. There's about 8 out of the billions and billions of them that don't require it. And that's it. All right. Let's make another bird. I'll say like 8.3. We'll do falcon. Make that one false. Okay, so I've got a couple of birds. We can print out some information about our bird. We can say print line. So how do I get information? Well, we don't have direct access to these variables. Like say I want to get the species, right? I could say, oh, let's find out what species bird 1 is. Okay, species. Well, this isn't going to work, because it's going to tell me it has private access. So I need to call the method getSpecies. And now that works. I could also say my bird1.eat, so that now my bird1 is no longer hungry. Notice that I'm not printing. I'm not printing when I call eat. That would actually cause an error. Why? Because eat is a void method. So if I try and print void, it'll say void type not allowed here. Because you can't print void. You can't print empty, right? So there we go. Let's try another one. How about my bird2.fly? It's not hungry yet, but now it should be hungry, and we'll print out that one. So those are just a few of the things to call, but remember that these methods are always called on the name of the object. Remember when we called out methods down here? I right-click, not on the class, on the bird, right? So, and you can think of this dot operator here where I say my bird.eat. That's like me right-clicking on that bird right there. And all these things you need to be able to do for our syntax test coming up. Super important. So make sure you practice it. All right, let's make a new animal app, and let's call the run method, and let's see what gets printed out. This this hopefully will make sense. You know, we printed out that the first bird was a crow. We made the bird eat so that when we print out whether or not he's hungry, it's now false because we just ate. And bird 2 we made fly, which makes him hungry. So now when we print out bird 2.get is hungry, we get true. And that's the story there. All right. So that's the practice with the bird. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to try this entire thing by yourself. I want you to make a class dog with a breed that's a word. The weight's going to be a floating point number, you know, like whole number and decimals. The age of the dog will be an integer. I want you to make 2 constructors this time. A default one where the parentheses for the parameters are empty and you set all the values of the variables yourself. Then I want you to make a constructor that allows the user to set those values. I want you to write one method that just ups age, that makes called upAge, that increases the age by 1. Then I want you to call getAge, write getAge, write getWeight, getBreed, and finally getOnDiet. GetOnDiet is when you put your kind of dog that's been a little lazy and getting old on a diet, and it will decrease the dog's weight by 2.5, but no less than 15. So if the dog is already like 16 pounds, then when you put him on a diet, it will only go down to 15.0. So you're going to need to use some logic and control statements there. Then in the practice class, I want you to make, in our little animal practice, I want you to make the run method create 2 dogs. One, your default constructor dog. The other one, the custom one. I want you to print the age of both, increase the age of one, put the other one on a diet, and print the weight and age of both. Pause the video and do all that. So remember, write the class and do the practice of creating the objects and calling them. All right, let's see how you did. All right, so we make a new class called dog. And remember, we want all of our instance variables to be private. If they're not private, then we could change them directly instead of through a method, and that causes problems. So public class dog. I'm going to have several instance variables that we all want private. String breed, private double so that we can have decimal numbers for the weight, and private int age. I'll make a default constructor first that takes no parameters, and in this case I have to make a default dog, which I'll just, maybe lab or mutt. And my weight, we'll say 45.0, and the age I'll make 3. So a lot of things in programming have a default constructor because it cuts down the amount of work you have to do. You don't have to feed it too much stuff in the constructor. Things like scroll bars and certain button types and menu panels, things like that are pretty much the same over and over and over again in every single application. We don't have to recode all that. But we also like to have at least some sort of option of customizing, so we'll go ahead and give that option. We'll have string B for breed, double W for the weight, and int A for the age. All right, so I will say breed equals B, weight equals W, and age equals A. Really, it's breed gets. When I say gets, I mean equals. Breed gets the B, weight gets the W, and age gets the A. Okay, now we're going to make some variables. Excuse me, when I make variables, we're going to make some methods. The methods that I described, one of them is called upAge. It's not returning anything, so we'll just say public void upAge. And we'll take our age and we'll increase it by 1. You could do that, or you could do this. They're all the same. I'm okay with plus plus, so I'll just say age plus plus. All right, next, let's do getAge. GetAge is returning the age. The age variable is an int, so I need to give a return type. Remember, whenever you write a method, you have to say what the method will return. That way people using your method know how to type the variable that's going to catch what you send back. So public int getAge, and that method is a getter or accessor. It simply returns the age. And then how about public double get weight, in which case I'll return the weight. And public string get breed, and I'll just simply return the breed. And our last method had some thought to it. Public void go on diet. So this method is supposed to decrease the weight by 2.5, but not let the total weight go down below 15. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and assume that it's safe, and I'll just minus equal 2.5. But now I want to GHT. Oops, still can't spell it right. So now what I want to do is check, did I go down too far? So I'm going to say if, and remember with if statements, you have to put parentheses around it. If weight is less than 15.0, then let's go ahead and make the weight be exactly 15.0, because we said it can't go below that. So if it did go below it, we'll just hard code it back up to 15. All right, so that's our dog class. Let's test it in the animal app. We can leave this or not, but I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And I'm going to create a couple dogs. First dog is going to be a default dog, so I don't put anything in the parentheses. The next dog I wanted you to do was one where you get to customize it. Dog 2, new dog, and we have to match the order of these constructors. So Java knows which constructor you're calling based on the parameters and the number of parameters and the types of them in the order that they're in. So when I say no parameters, it's going to know to use this one. This one here has to go string double int. So we have to give it string breed. I'll give it bulldog. It was, I've already forgotten, right? Double and int, double weight and age. All right. So I told you to print the age of both. So, oops, I've got two different dogs named dog 1. That's not going to work. System.out.println get age. And system.out.println dog 2.get age. I'm going to make dog 2 age, and I'll print out that one. Oh, I need to put the other one on a diet. Dog 1 dot go on diet, I think is what we call it. Notice I'm not trying to print those because they were void methods. One other thing, you'll notice that I'm not trying to put private in front of these two dog variables here. That would be only if they were variables declared outside of the method. But this is just a simple application method here. These are just temporary variables, so when we declare variables in a method, they only exist in that method scope, so we don't need to put an access modifier on them. All right, I've already put up the age of 1, I put the other on a diet, and I'm going to print the weight and age of both. So I'll say system.out.println dog 2.get weight and dog 2.get age. All right, and then system.out.println. You probably are wondering what I put over here. Okay, still fighting me on it. There we go. Then I'll do dog 1.get weight plus, oh, I'm missing a plus there, plus dog 1.get age. So it'll print it on the same line there, because put with a space in between them. So remember, our default dog had a weight of 45. So my dog 1 was my default. It should be something like 42.5 when I print it. And dog 2 should be 48.7, but an age of 5. Let's compile, and we'll construct the app and run. And you can see that that's what we get. So that's it for this lesson. So until I see you again, take care.